Welcome back to the Critics Initiative. Similarly to what I just did with Doctor Strange, I've had collab footage sitting around for over a year for Captain America: Civil War. Initially, this was supposed to be a review that worked kind of like an Avengers film, and so it was supposed to be a massive review collabing with several different YouTubers, including Mike from Did You See That, who always joined me for Captain America films, Robbie Reed, who always joined me for Iron Man films, and a few others as well, but the only one that I managed to join me was my main man Trav from TravTries. His appointed franchise was actually all the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, and seeing how Spider-Man was first introduced in Civil War, Trav sent me footage of his thoughts on this movie. So he will be joining me today for Captain America: Civil War. Let's get cracking. Captain America: Civil War pits Avenger versus Avenger when they're all confronted with the fact that their actions have consequences. They can't just go around destroying entire cities in order to defeat enemies. To fix that, the government is tasked with having the Avengers sign the Sokovia Accords, thereby disallowing them to save the day without the government's say-so. Some Avengers are all for this decision, some are utterly against it, which draws a line in the sand. Meanwhile, a mysterious man named Zemo has evil intentions for the Winter Soldier. So there's a lot to discuss with this film, and so little time to do just that. We will be hearing what TravTries has to say about Civil War in just a hot second! But first, it should be known that this is easily one of my favorite MCU films of all time. There's a lot of movies that pit iconic characters against each other, and every single Avengers film, at one point or another, they're usually fighting each other anyway. But this is one of the very best found in that category, as the politics behind everything and everybody's individual viewpoint on the Sokovia Accords is fully understandable and relatable, making it near impossible to truly pick a side. I've always loudly been Team Iron Man, but that's just because he's my favorite character. Captain America probably actually has a stronger argument and viewpoint overall because he can think outside the box, and he's a naturally born leader. Obviously, he's Captain America, not Pawn America. Directed by the Russo brothers, you automatically know that the film is going to be balanced really well, focusing on each independent character and their drives really well. Unless I'm mistaken though, this is the very first time they tackled a good majority of the members of the Avengers as a whole, and it felt like they've been doing it their entire lives. They're also known for really well-directed action sequences that are as memorable as they are breathtaking, and this is one of my favorite films in the MCU based solely on how memorable some of those scenes are in it. But it's also deeply emotional when it comes down to both the characters of Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, which comes to a head in the third act with an emotionally fueled finale, which changes the atmosphere of further MCU installments effectively. I do have some negatives to point out here, but first, I'll let TravTries give his thoughts on it. Take it away, my dude.
Captain America: Civil War will go down as one of my favorite superhero movies, if you can even really call it Captain America film. Avengers 2.5 more like, but Civil War, Avengers versus Avengers. I love it, and I loved it when it came out. I love it today. I feel like every time I view it is something more extra. What's up, guys? This is Trav, and Dave has asked me to do the Marvel Cinematic Universe collab with him, and he has strategically attached a character to two different YouTubers. So I forgot who else has who, but he gave me my boy Peter Parker himself, Spider-Man. I grew up on Spider-Man. That was my introduction to really superheroes in general. I definitely grew up with those original Raimi films. So I'm going to be a part of the MCU collabs moving forward, the ones that have Tom Holland's Spider-Man in them. So I'm excited to review these films, and he was first introduced in Captain America: Civil War. Like I said, it's like Avengers 2.5, but it gives you everything. It gives you spectacle. It gives you everything you want in a film like this. It's sort of like in Star Wars, how Order 66 was like the big thing, like the biggest event in canon, in the canon timeline, that just changed everything, set in motion for the Empire and stuff like that. Well, this Civil War does a lot for the MCU, splitting the Avengers in half, you know, without Thor and Hulk involved. Taking the Civil War comic and just making it into a phenomenal film with just obviously the all-star cast. You got Chris Evans, you got Robert Downey Jr., you got Tom Holland being introduced to Spider-Man, which was a really bold thing whenever Marvel made a deal with Sony to make this happen. It just felt right, because I remember when I first watched the first Avengers film, I remember thinking, like, I've just always thought of Avengers as with Spider-Man, and I'm glad that they got him. You really think about this. The Russo brothers did something really crazy, introducing Black Panther and Spider-Man, two just iconic characters, while also maintaining a story about like Iron Man versus Captain America. Their different views on the Accords because of like the things that they've done, like Sokovia in Age of Ultron. It's like everything has kind of led to this film, and I love that feeling. They don't really necessarily make it feel like how, kind of like how in Godzilla vs. Kong they made Godzilla, you know, the bad guy, as he sort of should be, but like in this, it's not like they made Iron Man the bad guy. They really balanced it to make it feel like this is how this would actually happen, while also kind of keeping Captain America the main character. You have the whole thing with Cap trying to protect Bucky, and what ends up happening with the end, really riding that line on if you should protect Bucky or not, and he still does. And Iron Man, in that scene, when he finds out about his parents, like, you feel that rage, but you also feel for Cap. It's like everybody, it's like you don't want them to fight, but you know it's going to be epic. They gave really good reasons for everything. I think maybe the parents thing with Tony, though, might have been a little bit predictable. I remember whenever a trail out in the woods, I thought as soon as it started for the first time, I'm like, that's going to be Tony's parents. It just makes sense. It totally, because we never got confirmation on like who killed them or like what happened to them really. So it like ties everything together. It's like Civil War did something where it is this big event that happens to the Avengers while also being a Captain America 3, while also being sort of bringing Iron Man's story really full circle. Like, and it's just crazy because like his dad back in World War II, you know, was alongside Cap, and it's really bizarre how they were able to make this so good. And this was the film that made me realize, like, Russo brothers, I'm excited to see what they do. And then Infinity War and Endgame, like, it's crazy that they really truly, in my opinion, made the best films in the MCU so far. Just a side note, Black Panther is amazing, and I love T'Challa in this. I really, really love him in this film. I love that he's on this vengeful quest. That Civil War Black Panther suit is my favorite. It's also the suit he's wearing at the beginning of the first Black Panther, but then he gets like that more sleek and sort of like thinner sort of suit, but I really like this Black Panther look. That's just a side note, and this is, you know, this is Spider-Man, you know, just starting. He doesn't even have like the suit yet. Tony has to make him one, and just a great addition in it. I think this was the perfect film to introduce Spider-Man if you were going to, and so then you kind of flesh out Spider-Man after that. We literally were introduced to this universe's Spider-Man in this film that already had a lot going on, and it flows. It works, and I love the conversation that Tony has with Peter. And it's also an opportunity for the film to slow down and just have a moment. And I love it. Big thanks to Dave for letting me come on here and be on this collab. Next, Spider-Man Homecoming is the next, where Peter Parker went next, his next film. So look forward to that.
Thank you to Trav from TravTries once again for joining me on my channel. Go ahead and check out the content on his channel, which I've left a link to in my description box down below. Most of what he does is food reviews, actually, but he does some other stuff. He's got some live streaming content, he's got a podcast, and a lot of other great stuff. In general, he's just a great guy, and I love watching whatever he decides to talk about, and I appreciate him joining me for this review. You and I definitely agree on most points here, Trev, though that's not hard to see when you have a film like this. But I do have some negatives, like I said. So even though this is one of my favorite films in the MCU, I don't think that it's perfect, maybe near perfect. But there is one glaringly obvious flaw to me, and that's the character of Zemo. I know that he has a lot of fans out there right now, but in terms of villains in the MCU, he is the one that is probably physically the weakest. Maybe not mentally, but even he says in the movie, if he was in the same room with any of the Avengers, he'd be a goner. He simply plays the role of puppeteer, pinning the Avengers against each other. but his role is so incredibly forgettable that you really do just see this movie as the film where the Avengers fight each other because of politics. But Zemo is integral as well. You just keep forgetting that. The introduction to Spider-Man was amazing, even though I've always thought his suit in this movie looked a little bit too cartoony and fake for my taste, and even though that this film is always referred to as the one that introduces Spider-Man, a lot of people kind of forget that it also introduced Black Panther, and it was obviously wonderful to see Chadwick Boseman's introduction to the MCU here. Overall, this is a great film in the MCU, and one of the few that I've seen several times. It's just hard to look away from. On a separate note, though, the 3D for the film is pretty darn good. It's not as good as Doctor Strange. I rated Captain America Civil War an A+ letter grade, final overall score of 98%. 98 out of 100 possible stars. In general, this is a must-see installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I want to thank TravTries for joining me in this review, and hopefully he will join me for future Spider-Man movies as well. Have you guys seen Captain America Civil War? If you have, please leave your thoughts about it in the comment section down below. And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit the like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out.